Okay,
Yep.
looks like we're live
We're
now.
good.
Hey everybody, and welcome to our live stream of Inner Reconciliation on the GP Walsh channel with GP Walsh himself. My name is Evan, and this is the last one for a minute as I'm leaving the country. GP will probably do some though.
Yeah.
And we always take on subjects that come to us repeatedly as questions and different subjects that come up from people who are practicing something GP has called Inner Reconciliation, which is his particular methodology of working with emotions, thoughts, and feelings, both spiritually and very practically in terms of your day-to-day life. And so with that comes the subject often of positive thinking. We get people from different backgrounds, and it doesn't matter whether it's more in the personal development world or just living on this planet. You know, the people of all walks of life talk about the benefits of positive thinking. To very spiritual ideas of like what you think about is going to happen. And so some people have a lot of stress around the idea of positive thinking because it's like whatever I think is going to
Isn't that
happen.
ironic?
It is ironic, yeah. And yeah, because if I think bad things, I'm creating bad things. And from that, all the way from that to just generally feeling better. And so there's obviously a lot of stuff on the subject out there. So we always want to try to at least give you perhaps a different perspective or just a useful way of working with it that may have a little different angle than other ways you've tried it. And we always are pretty spontaneous with these. I don't really tell GP what it's going to be. He works better that way. So I like to just sort of kick it off in a certain direction and let him take it. So we all know or have heard of positive thinking, and most of you've probably tried it to one degree or another. And you might find it very effortful to maintain, very difficult at times to, it might feel good for a second, but it seems like if you're not really diligent about it, your mind just kind of goes back into its particular habits or patterns, and it can feel like this thing that you have to sort of constantly stay on top of. But that itself is more thinking because you're thinking about positive thinking and you're thinking about the quality of your thoughts. And so, one way to look at it, perhaps a different approach to it, if you will, is it's still on the subject of positive thinking, but let's take a look at perhaps connecting to some different feelings, looking at how you feel, and then observing if your thoughts sort of naturally take on a different quality. One way you might have experienced this, and it's a little bit ironic, so I'll just share it briefly. I was listening to a particular teacher who's not alive anymore, who was talking about, who was kind of heavily emphasized the idea of thought. He might be more on like the realm of, what did you call it? New thought? That was
Yeah.
what it was called back
Yeah.
at that time, and might still be, and was really, praising the benefits of what you hold in mind and things of that nature. And as I was listening to him, there was just sort of an inspiring quality about it. And I was thinking, I was in a more positive state. And so my mind might be going, okay, well, now I got to think really positively. How am I going to do that? How am I going to maintain that? But meanwhile, just listening to this particular person, maybe I was walking, just being connected to that particular state, the quality of my thoughts was very different. And it was very different than perhaps if I was going to sit down and try to positive think or try to kind of force the issue. So let's take a look at it from the angle of connecting to some different feelings and noticing if that inherently changes the quality of your thinking or puts you in a different direction so that you don't have to, so that your own mind doesn't have to be in control of its own positivity, right? I mean, it's kind of hard to do. How can it itself be in control? It's like you're trying to manage your own self like that. It's the same tool that you're trying to have a different outcome with is the tool you're using. It's like trying to hit a hammer with itself or something. It can be,
Right.
it can do it, but and some people have done it successfully. But we're going to try to take this
It's
angle with
kind
it.
of like the thief being deputized by the police to catch the thief. He's not going to be able to. Oh no, I've been looking all over the place, can't find him. Um, that's what when you try to use the mind to quiet the mind or to make the mind more positive and enthusiastic, you really get wrapped around the axle. It's an impossible thing to do. it's a very different. Positive thinking happens. It's not something that you can do, because the moment you start doing it, you're going to be engaging all your judgment and all your resistance, and the patterns of thought that have already been set up are simply going to become more entrenched, because when you start actually pushing the mind in a particular direction, resistance happens. Remember, our minds are just another. I mean, it's not like the mind is like this thing that's operating independently of you, right? That has been, it's got its own little attitude and its own ideas, and it's out to get you. It is simply. Think of the mind like a computer. It's just a set of programs that are running, and the nervous system is just built in such a way to make things automatic. This is a good thing. This is why we can talk without having to remember how to form every word. It's why we can feed ourselves and dress ourselves, because repetitive stuff simply becomes automatic. We don't think about it anymore. In fact, that's all the subconscious mind is stuff that we thought enough times that that the nervous system decided we don't need to think about it anymore, and it just made it automatic. And so the tendency of our thought is that it's just kind of this groove that's happening. And so you can't just try to the hardest way to do it is to just try to get in there and change the groove through sheer brute force and effort and discipline. You can do it, but it really is difficult, because remember, if the groove has been put in place, right? This pattern of thought has been put into place, these recurring pattern of thought, because it's become automatic, it's very resistant to change. Matter of fact, it causes a lot of stress when you try to change it. Right? It's just like taking a like a gyroscope, right? It's a very stable system. When you knock it over, it rights itself. It just keeps coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. That's what this is. It's a stabilized system. I mean, obviously, it's a stable system. It's not heading in the direction you want it to go, but it is a stable system nonetheless. And it's obviously beneficial to be thinking happy, upbeat thoughts that make you feel good than thoughts that are, depressing or diminishing or self-judging. I mean, clearly there's a benefit to that. So how do you actually go about doing it in such a way that that you run into the least amount of resistance? As a matter of fact, how about no resistance? How about a smooth and easy transition? Wouldn't that be interesting? If all of this transformation into, spiritual awakening or self-help heaven or manifesting the life of your dreams was actually easy, surprisingly easy. Well, it is, because really what you want to focus on is the feelings underneath it. The only reason we would want to get a positive thought is because we feel better in the having of it. When the thinking consistently runs in a certain direction, we simply feel better. When it goes in this direction, we feel worse. Now, this is not rocket science, right? And there is a tendency to it. Imagine we've all had the experience of you're in a conversation, right? And something's bad has happened to somebody that's your friend, right? Especially when we're less awake and sensitive to the energy around us. So you're having a conversation with something, and they just had this horrible thing happen, right? This person did this terrible thing to them, and you go, oh, that's too bad. That happened to me once, and that was really terrible too. And you know what? This is what you need to do. Now, before you know it, this conversation goes on, and guess what? The tendency of that conversation is going to continue to head in that direction. I mean, it's just this kind of these downer thoughts. There's what we'd call a negative conversation is going on, but they get a momentum to them, right? And before you know it, 2 hours later, and you've just eviscerated everybody on the planet because they're all horrible human beings. And then eventually you kind of go, oh, God, that really feels horrible. And you want to pull away from it. You find it's more difficult to do. On the other hand, if you're in a conversation, somebody's really happy about something, and you're really rejoicing in what they're happy and you got something to be happy about, the conversation will head in the opposite direction. So the groove isn't necessarily just a bunch of thoughts that are going to repeat themselves. The groove is our tendency to want to direct our attention in a certain direction. If we notice that where our attention is beginning, wherever our attention goes, it's going to start to amplify. And the longer it stays there, the bigger it's going to get, like either a negative conversation or a positive conversation. So it isn't all about the thoughts. It's about the tendency of our attention. Now, if we're ignorant, we just kind of follow where the attention goes. It goes out of habit. We never question it, and then we wonder why we feel so bad. Right? But if we become conscious of it, which is exactly what we're doing now, you begin to watch where your attention is going. Because wherever it's going, if you don't consciously put it in the direction you want it to go, it'll keep going. And it'll get bigger. And it'll say, oh, I guess we're headed this way. Let's make it even more. And it'll start cranking that amp up to 10 because that's what the nervous system was designed to do. The energy system was designed to do that. There's the natural association of the mind that it's always grabbing a thought that's similar to the thought that it has. In the metaphysical realm, they call it the law of attraction. This thought is going to attract thoughts that are like it. In neurology or psychology, they would call it the associative functioning of the mind. And creativity actually works that way. You notice if you get on a creative roll or in the flow, just one thing after another, well, that's exactly what it is. It's the tendency of our attention to basically create an energy that becomes self-perpetuating. If that happens enough, this is what we call a habit, this is what we call a trend. All it takes is awareness of where your attention is going. It's not a big struggle. You don't have to fight all the negative thoughts and try to make new positive thoughts. It becomes a matter of where is my interest going? And if you really want to have a progressive full life, the life that positive thinking promises, you put your attention towards that which feels good. I mean, it really is kind of a no-brainer, right? If your attention is going to something that starts making you that starts feeling like it's pulling you down, take your attention off of it. Just don't go in that direction. And sometimes that may feel hard. Sometimes you can't actually, come up with an alternative direction. But if you just stop moving in that direction, just come back to center. I mean, just a meditation or the practice I've taught of allowing. Just like, okay, I see it happening. I'm not going to go head in that direction. I'm just going to come back to neutral. I'm just going to put the car in neutral, and not participate in that. I see it happening. I see the thoughts beginning to cascade. I got it. It's obvious what's going on. I don't want to participate in that anymore. I'm going to turn around and face in the opposite direction. And little by little, you'll find the opportunity comes for you to rest your attention on things that are far more progressive, far more interesting, far more helpful, far more happy, far more creative. And the exact same energy will then start to pick up speed, and you'll find yourself just having positive thoughts. You don't have to make them up. They just start happening because your attention is towards that which is progressive. And the reason this works is because our natural state is happiness. And so merely the more negative the conversation gets, the worse we feel. Now that should be a clear indication of don't go there, right? I mean, when you stick your hand in a fire, you don't sit there and try to make the fire cooler and wonder why it's there and, God, I've really got some negative thoughts here. You pull your hand out of the fire. You go, God, I'm not going to do that again. That's the whole point of feeling bad is to let you know you're headed in the right direction, and feeling good means you're heading in the wrong direction. And feeling good means you're headed in the right direction. It's really very, very simple. The further away from who you really are, the worse you'll feel. The closer to who you are, the better you'll feel. And that's a clear indicator of it. So it isn't really about getting positive thoughts. It's about becoming really conscious of where your attention is going to, because wherever that goes to is the reality, the perception, the experience you're going to have. That's the way it works. It is simply the focus of your attention, and taking control of that isn't that hard once you become conscious of it and recognize that how it feels as you begin to head down the road you don't want to head down, and how it feels when you head down the road that you do. And remember, the nervous system was designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So the more it gets of that, the more it's going to want to gravitate in that direction, and until you find it's just very natural to be upbeat and expectant and have faith and confidence and equanimity and resourcefulness. It'll just happen very, very naturally because you have the capacity for it. And the activating ingredient, the thing that generates the actual creation of your reality is simply the focus of attention. It's that powerful.
Okay, a couple places we could go with this. In the meantime, though, we'll see if anybody has any specific questions. And thanks to those of you who chimed in.
Yeah.
Got people from Texas, Wisconsin, UK, Utah. Jill just said, nice to hear others talk about this in the same way that I've understood it. It definitely gets very misunderstood by many. Yeah, for sure. Okay, one thing I would say that we could explore a little bit is if you take a look at thought, really, even right now, you'll notice that your mind is basically describing what's in your awareness, right? It's basically giving names and labels and descriptions and making further stories. So, for example, I look around the room and my mind is calling this, there's the lights, there's the camera, and whatever stories it has about these things, right? So the thoughts are sort of coming up to describe or give some kind of form, not solid form, but they're giving some kind of form to what I'm experiencing. So if I'm in a particular feeling state or just going through something, my mind is sort of describing that. It's sort of generating pictures, ideas, concepts, and connecting them to other concepts, because that's what the mind does, right? And so it's so fast that it seems instant, but you could say it's sort of secondary in that it is, for the most part, I can't say 100% of the time, but it's often our thoughts are reactive in some way to what is being felt. So if you are in a particular state, your thoughts are going to be describing that. They're going to be reflective of that. They may not be literally talking about it. Hey, I feel sad right now, right? But they'll be colored in that way. Just as, if you're in a good mood, things literally look differently, they smell differently, the mind's activity is sort of descriptive of where you're at. So it's kind of like trying to change the label on something, right? That's like something smells bad and you're just trying to change the descriptive label on it.
Marketing does that all the time.
Yeah, marketing does that all the time, right? You just give it a different name that sounds better.
That's right. Try to convince you that it actually smells good.
Now, if you're persistent enough with it, you can reframe things in a certain way that can begin to kind of, shift your energy. But it's a lot faster to just take a really unfiltered look at where you are right now, and then that will calm down the mind quite a bit. Because when your mind's really active, and if you're in an emotional state, which most of us are a lot of the time, the mind is actively describing that, right? It's actively engaged in that. And so it's kind of like a fan that's spinning, and you're trying to spin it in another direction while it's currently spinning, right? So you're in, let's say, a negative state. It doesn't have to be negative, though. Things might be generally okay, but you're just trying to practice positive thinking, right? You don't have to necessarily be depressed or something, but you're still in whatever kind of state you are, whatever views you have of the world, and that's kind of all spinning and active. And if you're trying to interject ideas about something that's not really what you're feeling, it will have this quality of like trying to push against something that has a lot of momentum, and that's why it can feel very effortful. But if you start to just connect to, okay, well, what am I feeling right now? And even just go into that, go into your body, go into what you're experiencing, and then have your attention on it, you'll sort of start to see the reality that your mind is describing. So it's like you're looking at the actual substance and not the marketing package, not the somebody telling you about this food, but you're kind of actually tasting the food and saying, okay, what's going on with me? How am I actually feeling right now? And what direction am I kind of going in? And see if you can, because GP was talking a lot about the direction that you're going in. And now, rather than thinking of it in terms of grabbing better or worse thoughts for a moment, just see if you can feel, even in you right now, a certain like pull in a certain direction. For example, one of like really working hard, or man, life is really tough and I really got to work hard against this, or things are really bad in the world right now, and there's just a particular kind of feeling about that. The thoughts are describing that, but it has just a certain energy to it. And then just poke around a bit and see if there's anything that when you start to look towards it, it makes you feel at least maybe a little more inspired, maybe a little energized. You know, in this room, the camera that we're looking at is actually stuck right in the like right in the nook of one of my instruments, right? And so when I look at the instrument, I feel really good. Like I love this instrument, and I actually want to be touching it right now. So looking at this bass in front of me, I start kind of going in the direction of that. Like, oh yeah, that would feel good to play it. Makes me maybe start thinking of music I like. Music is a good one for me. If you listen to a song you really like, there's kind of an energy to it. There's like a state that's there. You don't have to reach for thoughts about the song. Right? That's actually a good metaphor if you think about it. You know, if you think about when you're listening to a piece of music you like, or if you're not as musically inclined, a food you like, a movie, a person you like, right? If you're in that experience, it has a different feeling, and the thoughts are automatically different, right? So just compare the experience to trying to like have thoughts about that food, right? It's not really the thought about the food. You can use your mind just to kind of look in the direction of, hey, I like music, or think of that song. After that, it's kind of already revealed a direction to you that you can go down. And so let me know if this makes sense, like if you're actually able to kind of connect to it on a feeling level, because once you do that, it's so much easier than kind of trying to grab a thought, because you are actually moving in a direction where thoughts that reflect that, they're going to be describing that direction, right? Because remember, they're describing what's going on.
Yeah, inner reconciliation doesn't take that approach of fix your thoughts and then you'll feel better. It takes the approach of is just forget the thoughts and go directly to the feelings. Go directly to exactly what you're feeling in that moment. And the first step one is simply be with it. Right? Be neutral about it. Don't try to be fixing it or changing it, right? I mean, obviously you're in a feeling and you want to feel better. That's normal. Everybody, I don't care how good you feel, there's always the possibility to feel better. So in any given moment, whatever you're feeling, there's simply the desire to feel better. Now that's going to be there. It's very natural. But don't try to force it. Just be with that feeling for a bit. And even simply accepting what you're feeling in the moment takes away the conflict with it. And the real problem we have is actually inner conflict. It's not bad thoughts. It's conflict with our thoughts. It's a conflict that we create with the way we feel. So if we first just completely remove the conflict and be present, just allowing it to be the way it is, you'll find that it's very easy to begin to reach for something that feels better. Reach for a thought. And then what happens is that the thoughts begin to be really integrated into the way that you're feeling. And you realize that it's really all about the feelings. We're not simply trying to manipulate thoughts. We're really reaching for more happiness, for more joy, for a feeling of more abundance, a feeling of more wealth, a feeling of more love, a feeling more of compassion. That's really what we're reaching for. And there's always more available to you in any given moment, because there's absolutely no limit on it. The truth is there's no limit on your capacity for feeling love and abundance and happiness and wealth. There's no limit on it whatsoever. So it really is all about getting to a place of real acceptance of the way you're feeling, so you drop the fight you have. You'll notice that the moment you let yourself just feel what you're feeling, no matter what it is, there will be a sense of ease that comes over the system, because you've dropped the conflict, right? It takes two to make a war, right? And so whatever your feeling is doing, if you don't resist it, if you just let it be there, you've immediately created an atmosphere of peace. And one other thing you've done too, you've communicated something to your energy system that it isn't normally used to feeling from you. And that is, you're communicating that you are safe, that it's okay the way it is. It doesn't have to change now. It doesn't have to conform to something in order to please you, that you're just okay with it. And just do it for a minute, and you'll notice the difference that it feels. It's like everything in you can begin to relax. And of course, out of that relaxation, what happens? More progressive, positive, happy thoughts. It's inevitable that the energy would begin to move out of its defensive posture and into a more expressive one. That's our nature. When our sense of safety becomes stronger, we don't just sit around then, and read magazines. But when we begin to feel safe, our natural creative energy begins to appear. That progressive, positive energy that we all long happens spontaneously, first in feeling and then in thoughts. So that's really the way to approach it. Don't try to manipulate your thoughts into getting a feeling, because then all you're doing is creating an atmosphere of conflict and force, right? And you don't like to be forced in anything. Well, your energy system is no different. It doesn't want to be forced. It wants to be cajoled. It wants to be invited. It wants to be welcomed. So that's really the first step. Just kind of establishing this neutral baseline of peace and an absence of struggle. And then just watch what happens. Watch how easy it is to turn your attention towards something that you want without having any resistance to it, to the stuff that matters to you, that really matters to you. And you'll find that reaching for that better feeling isn't hard at all. And you end up with positive thinking kind of slipping in the back door.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it a lot more natural that way. So if anyone has any questions about that, otherwise we'll bring this to a close. We've got a good question that I'm actually going to restart as another video, because it's its own universe. Yeah. So we'll just see if there's anything else on that.
Well, quite a few comments.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, anybody, as always, this video is going to be there for as long as YouTube exists afterwards. So if you have any questions or comments, please try that out. Let us know how that works for you. Let us know how that feels. The summary version of it would be just kind of take a step back, take a neutral examination of just where you're at, what you're feeling right now. Allow yourself to feel it. Allow yourself to explore that territory a bit, and see if there's like a direction of sorts that you find you're being pulled in one way or the other, and let it kind of explore that territory and feel into it, and notice, without really trying to change your thoughts, that the quality of your thoughts begins to shift with the direction that let's say the direction you're looking at. And then they will feel natural, because when you're trying to put a thought that's not really reflective of what you're really feeling, it does feel out of place, right? So surprisingly, it's a lot simpler to kind of move in the direction of where that thought would naturally happen.
It's actually even seems counterintuitive to actually allow what I'm considering to be a negative feeling to be there. It would seem like I'd be amplifying it, but exactly the opposite is true. Resisting it amplifies it.
Right.
Being present with it actually calms it.
Great. So everyone who's here, I'm going to start another stream for this next question. So just
Hang in.
go back to the page, and we'll start another live stream. Okay? See you in a bit.